Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the My Career Path podcast. Today I have a special guest, Ben Davidson. Now Ben is actually the head of HR of a large financial institution in Eastern Idaho, and as well as the founder of Entropov, which is Entrepreneurs Against Poverty. So he helps people out in Africa to combat poverty. So it's just amazing to talk with him about the hiring processes, what we can do to stand out, as well as how we can help people in need. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoy. Well, perfect. So tell me a little bit about yourself and just kind of introduce yourself to the audience, Ben. What are some of the biggest achievements for you in your life?
Okay. Well, of course, family is number one. And after family, it would probably be founding Entropov, which is short for Entrepreneurs Against Poverty. So we launched 15 months ago, and I'm really happy that in our first 13 months of existence, we funded 25 startups. So we gave startup grants. Typically, they're about 1,000 US dollars to African
Wow.
entrepreneurs. And I was really relieved after this time to realize that I am still doing it for what I consider to be the right reasons. They're not just numbers, but they're friends. I can name every single person that we've given a grant to and talk about them. I've shaken hands with half of them and keep in touch pretty regularly with them.
Well, that's awesome. And I definitely want to get into more about Entrepov and the people and lives that you're changing and helping out, because I just think it's an amazing opportunity for the people that you're working with, as well as for people who are listening to the podcast. As I think you mentioned in your book, which we'll also kind of get to, as possibility for kind of doing externships or helping out and just getting the right title. So we'll definitely jump into that, and I'm excited to talk about that. So what is your current position right now, and how many years have you been in that position?
So in my current position at Interpov is angel entrepreneur. It's kind of like an angel investor, except I take no profits or ownership. So I say it's angel entrepreneur. And like I said, I've been doing this for about 15 months. It's my hobby. My real job, my day job is vice president of HR. Been doing that for about 12 years for a large financial institution.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. Kind of the two sides, your hobby that's turned into quite a big project that's really just an awesome opportunity, as well as doing the HR and working with people and helping them out. So let's talk about your career path. Kind of what was the first job that you ever held? Let's kind of map out what your journey looks like.
Yeah, so like many people, I mowed lawns as a kid, so I was self-employed, and I learned that soft skills matter even at a really young age. My clients wanted to talk to me as much as they wanted their lawn mowed. Usually they were nice little old retired ladies, and so I would get lots of referrals and learned that soft skills were important. My brother was in the business with me, and he didn't like to talk to people, so I had to handle all the money and arranging the schedule and everything. So yeah, it taught me a lot of good lessons. Then skip forward quite a few years to call center supervisor was one of the other jobs that was really formidable, and I learned to put in long hours, that it was important to be useful to my employees. This was back when Palm Pilots were brand new, and so I bought one of those with my own money and loaded a lot of the important documents and how to job aids and things to help my call center employees when they ran into different problems, so I could be really useful and help them with shortcuts and figure problems out. So that was really important and taught me a lot. It was definitely the job that made me the most nervous in my career. Um,
Really? Why
and
is that?
it's a pretty well known fact of study that your first managerial job is the hardest job you will ever have. It's the toughest transition is your first supervisor job because it's so different than everything you've done in the past. So that was really the case. I remember many times thinking, I can't wait till I don't look so young anymore, because managing people that were older than me was kind of intimidating, and the imposter syndrome was definitely in place there.
I can't agree more with that. I feel that right now. I work as a director of operations, so I get to oversee kind of the day to day, making sure things are shipped out, making sure inventory is carried. But pretty much everyone I work with is older than me. And I definitely feel that going, I don't know if I'm really qualified to do this. And there's a lot of self doubt, a lot of that imposter syndrome that just kind of plagues me and who I am. But it doesn't stop me from trying, but it's a factor in what I think about a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yep. And then the next job after that was HR labor relations. So got a call from somebody in the HR department who said, "Hey, you've always been really good at managing your people. We're putting HR out into the field, meaning out into little Idaho." And so I got hired into HR and I really learned how to make my clients happy through providing speedy service. I was easily reachable. This is when instant messaging was relatively new, so I was an early
Hmm.
adopter of that, and my clients absolutely loved being able to get a hold of someone in HR at a moment's notice. I learned how to anticipate clients' needs and kind of guide them through the people problems and the things they didn't really want to be dealing with on their own. So I really enjoyed that and discovered that human behavior and organizational dynamics were just fascinating.
Yeah, and that's something that my dad kind of shares that same sentiment. He's the HR director at Utah State, and I interviewed him a while ago, and that was something that he shared. Just seeing how people's brains worked and how different people thought, and just seeing how that kind of they all work together to kind of form the workplace. And there's different things that come up that you get to kind of play with and get to make up, come up with your own solutions and help solve problems. What kind of mentors have you had throughout your career? Is there anyone that you can kind of think of that was really a huge influence on you as you were kind of finding your spot and finding your career?
Yeah, my father, he was definitely a good example of work ethic. I remember as a kid, my favorite things to do were go into his garage and I would stand on his toolbox and so I could reach the workbench and I had free reign of all of his tools and the parts that he had just to build whatever I wanted. So he was a great example of work ethic. And then I thought of lots of books that I've read that have had a big impact. So
Oh,
one of them,
perfect.
yeah, one's called "It's Your Ship: Management Techniques from the Best Damn Ship in the Navy." Taught me to lead with my heart and to how to get the very best ideas and effort from those that I lead. Another one is "Man's Search for Meaning." Viktor Frankl really teaches you the power of your own thinking to rise above your circumstances. "The Street Lawyer" by John Grisham taught me a lot of compassion for the poor, the homeless, and people with mental health challenges. And it got me started volunteering in soup kitchens and eventually led me down the road of starting my own nonprofit, Intrapov. And one that recently that I read that I really liked, surprisingly, is Fight Club. And it taught me to reject consumerism and the race to acquire more cars, homes, boats, toys. It's a very raw book, but really,
Huh.
really interesting. And I got a quote out of it that resonates with me so much, and it really ties into my origin story with Entrepreneurs Against Poverty. I was sitting one day watching the World Series. This was about 2 years ago, and getting frustrated because my team wasn't doing well. And I remember I had my feet up on an ottoman and I was snacking, just taking it easy. But I was frustrated with the game and also frustrated that I'd been trying to help a friend in Cape Town, South Africa,
Hmm.
start a business, and we'd had a few failed business attempts. And her work permit wasn't getting renewed, so she had no way to get some income. She was bouncing from sketchy apartment to sketchy apartment. And I remember sitting there and thinking, what the hell am I doing? And I threw the remote down, turned after turning off the TV, and got up and sat down at my laptop and started pounding out some ideas that eventually led to helping her set up a virtual assistant job on Fiverr.com, a freelance virtual assistant.
Yeah, the freelance site. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so with a couple $100, started buying gigs from her, which taught the algorithm that she was the real deal and they needed to recommend her to other people. And it took off, and she has now been really successful and able to live in a nice apartment and has more work than she can handle and sends money home to her family in the village and takes care of a lot of
Wow.
people. So that was kind of what got me started into Interpov. And the quote that I love from Fight Club is this: like everyone else, I had become a slave to the IKEA nesting instinct. I even wondered what kind of dining set defines me as a person. I'd become a consumer, not a person. I was trapped in a lifestyle obsession. crime, poverty, these things didn't concern me. What concerned me were celebrity magazines, television with 500 channels, some guy's name on my underwear. Advertising had me chasing things I didn't need.
Wow. Yeah, and I just think that's so important now more than ever. And I think especially with just how easily accessible everything is now with Amazon, and we overthink kind of who we are and what really matters. And a lot of that comes from kind of social standing. Sometimes we have at work a different personality than who we are just in with our friends, with our families and things like that. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Can have a distinction between the two, but it doesn't mean that we have to have a different mask or a different kind of persona that we need to put on. And I think that's just so powerful, realizing that we have control and that we really should be looking to improve other people's lives more than how does this look to other people.
Yeah, ever since my first trip to Africa, I'm so grateful for the little things, and it makes me so much happier in life. For me, there's no pressure to keep up with the Joneses now. I could care
Yeah.
less. And I just treasure the friendships that I have in Africa from the people we've given startup grants to. Almost every day, I'll get a text from somebody in Ghana or Nigeria giving me an update on how their business is doing, sending me pictures of them and their kids. And it's one of the happiest parts of my day for sure.
Yeah, and even in your book, you kind of mention the importance of kind of building those relationships. And you mentioned kind of going into a job interview and going in with the mindset of I'm here to build a relationship, to build a connection, and whether I get the job or not, that's a win-win. I've built that relationship. I now have another friend, another person that can care and that I can think about and work with. And that's just so important nowadays because networking is really kind of a scary term for a lot of kind of upcoming college and high school graduates because really it's kind of daunting to kind of go and build these connections because you kind of have to put yourself out there a little bit. How do you think people could get over that hurdle and really start to build more of those connections and kind of get outside themselves?
Believe it or not, I am an introvert, and what you just shared came from one of the best bosses I've ever had, named Paul Rudder.
Hmm.
He was my boss when I first started doing telecom sales, like I explained in my book, and I really wasn't cut out for sales. Don't have the right personality for it. I'm not competitive. I don't have a big enough ego to overcome all the no's that you get, all of those things. But he taught me don't focus so much on pressuring yourself to make the sale. Just go in there and learn about yourself by focusing on the person and just seeing what you can discover about yourself from being put in these difficult situations. And I grew a ton from that, and it did take a lot of the pressure off.
Hmm.
I look back on my career, some of the biggest factors that have led me to where I am today in my current role as head of HR was learning through hard situations and being outside my comfort zone so much, especially in my early HR jobs when I would be in charge of negotiating with the labor union on grievances or other negotiations. I still remember the first time I met with a grizzled unionist and sat down across the table and he started cursing and taking the food off and pounding it on the desk. And I had to go in and shut down entire call centers and explain to them what the severance package was and be the
Wow.
brunt of the anger that comes from that. I spent a lot of time with labor attorneys, which was an invaluable education for me, learning about labor law. So these really tough times as I look back, were some of the best times, even though at the moment they weren't the greatest. But sometimes if we can just think about all we're learning from the situation, take ourselves out of it a little bit, that's really what my boss was saying when he was coaching me back then.
Well, I think also that kind of helps us get away from the mentality of that imposter syndrome. If we start to kind of lessen our focus on ourselves, on how we're doing. Also, in the book, one of my favorite quotes was from Benjamin Hatfield, and he said, "Stop worrying about the money will come." And I really take that as if you find what area you want to be and how you can help people, and kind of get away from yourself almost, you'll just find so much more success, so much more joy, and your life will be so much more fulfilling if you just kind of take yourself out of the equation, so to speak.
Yeah. One of the things that is also important is to find out what you're good at And in the book, I talk a lot early on about taking a Myers-Briggs assessment. There's
Hmm.
a link, take it for free, and make sure that you get into the right line of work because we've been told all our lives that you can do anything that you put your mind to it. It's kind of true, but a lot of it is not true.
Uh-huh.
You can't truly be great at something just because you're putting your mind to it. We all have natural skills, natural ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving that are who we are. So in the book, I explain I'm not a salesperson. Sure, I could hack it for 6 months and do well, but I hated it. And it was the wrong career path for me. But for
Right.
some reason, my natural biology, the chemistry inside of me works for HR, whereas other people would hate that.
Yeah.
Choosing the right career path is important.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge hurdle to kind of get over. I know, especially for me, because when you're just entering college, you have to declare your major, and so I had no idea what I was signing up for, you know. And I know plenty of people who go through universities and college and even some training programs and certificates where they're like, I'm not really sure this is what I want to do, but it sounds like it's cool, or it sounds like it'll let me earn a living. So, how would you, other than the Myers Briggs personality test, just to kind of help drill it in, how else would you say for audience members to find what they're good at, to find that career path that they should kind of start working their way down?
Yeah, one of the premises of the book is to not wait for the right title or the right work experience. It's to go out and get it. We live in a time now where, because of the internet and Amazon.com and everything they've shown us, anyone can have any job title, put up a website, and start building work experience through volunteer work. So one of the reasons I even started Interpop to begin with was to help students be able to get the job title they wanted
Hmm.
and build experience. So one of my first interns that I had at Interpop was the marketing director because she was getting ready to graduate from university and she wanted to go work for a publishing company. So I said, yeah, you can be my marketing director. And I had her write articles for me and be the webmaster and do interviews. And she even submitted some articles to journals on behalf of the organization. And she landed a great gig right out of school and had on her resume a marketing director title for a nonprofit. And so I think that's really how people should be looking for jobs these days. And it's a great way to meet people by doing volunteer work.
Is that something that you're still kind of doing? You talk a lot about that in the book. Is, hey, email me what title and job that you'd like to have, and we'll kind of get you hooked up and started. Is that still something that's available?
Yeah, I have a lot of interns that work with me at Interpov, and most of them just want to get credit for the class. But the really, really good ones, they're passionate about the work that they do. They actually think about it. They're not trying just to get the grade, but they're trying to get the job done in a really good way. And I love to give them great recommendations when they apply for jobs, and I love to give them whatever job title they want.
That's awesome. I just think that's such an amazing experience and opportunity that I think people should really take advantage of. Is there's so much power in a title, because you talk a lot about this as well as far as the hiring process, our current hiring process, and how it's kind of a broken system. So how do you think having the right title can help you get in the door?
Yeah, an HR recruiter is going to skim through resumes and applications and look for specific job titles, and anyone that doesn't fit in that box, their resume is going to get rejected
Hmm.
pretty quickly. And so it's important to have the right job title and the right experience. One example I use in the book is of a financial analyst that has 2 years of experience at a company, and he does just kind of menial, low level jobs, transferring data into spreadsheets.
Hmm.
And he would get hired into a financial analyst job a lot quicker than this other intern that I had who was really, really smart. But he didn't have that job title until he came to Interpov, and I gave him the financial analyst job title. And on paper, he didn't look as good as this other guy, but what he was actually doing was much more dynamic and applied much more to the job. So we're kind of helping hiring managers get out of their own way by translating the experience that an intern has into the language that the hiring manager can actually understand. One example I like to give is 12 years of work experience can either be someone who learns new things year over year, or you could
Right.
have someone who repeats 1 year of work experience 12 times and doesn't learn, doesn't get any better, is not really a great employee. So when you look at it, work experience and education statistically are not very closely tied to excellence within a job. The real predictor of doing a great job is tied to other factors like job tryouts, some of these more structured interviews that are based on studying top performers that are already in the role and how they naturally think, feel, and behave. So a lot of this really is about helping the hiring manager get out of their own way because they really can only see job titles and keywords in job duties.
Well, that's just especially true as I've kind of looked around at other possibilities and opportunities and submitted my resume to a whole bunch of different places as well. It's like, okay, what on my resume would make me stand out? And being so young and kind of early in my career path, there's not a lot there. But having that right title and I love that, 12 years of experience, but maybe you're just doing the same thing year over year over year over year. Whereas if you have 2 years of experience where you've grown over those 2 years and really added on yourself and improved yourself in some way, that can mean a whole lot more. But the hiring manager doesn't necessarily see that just on a piece of paper.
Yeah, one of the things that I talk about in the book is that a student should always do their research papers and their projects on a company that they might actually want to work for.
Mm-hmm.
And don't make these hypothetical. In the book, I explain how to contact an employer that you may want to work for someday and how to meet the right people and to ask them what keeps you up at night. What would you want to research if you had more time, but you can't do that now? And the example I gave was when I was first trying to figure out how to get my employees to actually learn material and not just say that they had completed training, but to actually learn it. I needed a learning management system, but there's no way I would have talked to a software salesman about learning management
Right.
systems. But if an intern had called me up and said, "Hey, what do you need researched?" I'd have told them, "Research learning management systems, please. These are my requirements." And they could have done an amazing school research paper and then given that to me at the end of the research period, and I would have introduced them to anyone at my company and listened to them and taken their phone calls. So these are the kind of things that students need to be doing. But like I said, most interns that I work with just want to do good enough to get the grade.
Right.
But I like to hire people that actually have a passion for the work, that want to write articles for me, that want to do real world jobs and actually help my entrepreneur startups in Africa and do some amazing things. All of that makes great resume food and examples that you can share during job interviews.
Yeah, and I think especially just finding the right people and reaching out to the right people. You also mentioned times where you reach out to the hiring manager and go, okay, what problems do you need solved? Because really, when you're trying to find a new job, it's an exchange of goods. You're going to exchange your labor to a company, and they'll give you a wage, and hopefully the benefit of hiring you is going to outweigh the cost and the risk. But finding what problems need solved and using that in the interview or trying to figure out that kind of key question, what problems or issues are you having that you need help solving, and how you can resolve those issues and problems, is just a huge, it just really locks you in their brain as a hiring manager. I think it makes you memorable.
In the book, one of the stories I share is when my the company I used to work for was in telecom and it got taken over twice, hostile takeovers, which means layoffs and
Mm-hmm.
terrible things. So the second time that we got taken over, I started immediately looking for a job that would require me to stay in my hometown. And what I found was a high speed data sales job. And coming out of HR, you're not going to look very good to the hiring manager. So I said to myself, what does this hiring manager really want? he could care less if I called him and said, I really want the job. I'm great. Trust me. Wouldn't listen. But what he really wants is sales contracts signed. He has a sales territory that's empty and he needs sales contracts. So I put together a plan and talked to my friends who owned businesses and convinced them to sit down with a salesperson to talk about updating their data lines. And I wrote all this up and sent it to the hiring manager. And within 2 hours, this guy who I'd never met before called me. Um, and he said, Hey, this is really good info. I appreciate it. By the way, I'm hiring for a job in this area. Are you interested? And I said, Yeah. And then the rest is history. I got the job.
Wow. And that reminds me of another story that I heard. I don't remember where I heard it from. It was a story about a guy who basically was just putting together boxes. He was walking around the streets one day and he just saw that a door was open to a company and people were just building boxes. So he came in one day and just started building boxes and all the employees were going, "Who is this guy? Like did you hire him?" And the manager came out and was like, "Who are you?" And he was like, "I just was kind of bored. I was walking around. I saw some guys doing some work, so I jumped in." He got the job, and just doing things like that to kind of set you apart, making some kind of a project, which you talk about a lot in the book, is doing kind of these work projects to send to these hiring managers to say, "Hey, look, this is what value I can add," and just doing those things as a way to stand out instead of just aimlessly sending your resume to whatever job application and job postings that you can find, like on Indeed or LinkedIn or things like that. I think is just infinitely more important, and it'll help you so much more as opposed to just sending your resume to here and there hoping that someone will get back to you.
Yeah, I really had fun writing the book. It's called Get Hired Guarantee. It's on Amazon, and it's a free download. I tried selling it initially, but it was no fun to try to promote it. It was more fun to mark it down to zero as a
Mm-hmm.
free download and watch it fly off the shelves. So I'm approaching 7,000 downloads just since the publishing in 2020. And so, yeah, I'd go out to Amazon, search for Get Hired Guarantee, and the Kindle ebook version is free.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend it. Anyone who's kind of looking for a dream job, anyone who's just trying to find the next phase of their life, it gives so many actionable tips, so many insights as to what hiring managers are looking for, and it's just a phenomenal book. Go pick it up today. Go take a peek at it. If you need help or if you want anything like that, reach out to Ben. He's a fantastic person. I want to talk a little bit more about the Entrepov and just if you have any other stories that you'd be willing to share about people that you've helped, because I just think it's an amazing cause. I know my in-laws have kind of donated a little bit, and they're always super excited every time we come. They kind of show, hey, this is their spreadsheet, this is what they're tracking, and things like that. Are there any other stories that you could share with everybody about that?
Yeah. One of the coolest businesses that I'm working with right now is catfish farms in Ghana. And so there is a charity nonprofit over there that's working with a pharmaceutical company to find farmers who want to raise catfish for them. And then the pharmaceutical company will buy the catfish back and harvest them for the meat and also for the omega 3s for their supplements. So all the farmer in Ghana has to do is come up with enough money to create a pond, a tarpaulin pond. So it's like an above ground pond that's 15 by 15 by 4 feet deep. And then they'll give them the fingerling catfish and all the feed that they need to raise them for 6 months to maturity. And so this is out of reach of most of the people there because it costs about $1,000 to build the pond, to pay to change the water out every 2 weeks, and to build a fence around it to keep it secure.
Mm-hmm.
So for one Interpov grant of $1,000, someone can make a really, really good living, and it will get them out of poverty permanently. And so that's one of the funnest ones. We're working on our third catfish farm and hope to do a bunch more. And so next time I go to Africa, I would love to go visit this part. It's in more of the northern part of Ghana that I haven't been to yet. And so I want to go check out some catfish farms and go on a safari there.
That would be awesome.
If anyone is interested in learning more about Entropov, it's ENTRAPOV.com. apov.com, or you can Google Entrepreneurs Against Poverty. We have a really good website where we share a lot of success stories, and we also post the current entrepreneurs that are looking for sponsorship. And so we're always happy when people browse our website and contact us.
Well, just to kind of finish up, I love asking people if they've had any funny or humorous work experiences or stories that you just kind of look back on. You maybe shake your head and you give yourself a little giggle. Anything like that you'd be willing to share?
I was meeting with a group of students at Idaho State University the other evening, and they asked me that question. And what came to mind was when I was a brand new call center supervisor. One day I was working away and I noticed that the call center director and his assistant started carting in pallets full of marshmallows and setting them around the call center. And one of the things that our call center director was trying to work on was having a culture of fun. And so he gets up on a desk, tears open a bag of marshmallows, and starts throwing them at different people and taunting them to join in. So we go and launch a full on marshmallow fight, and there's carpets that are all ruined
Oh,
and window trimmings that are destroyed. And one of the marshmallows actually hits the phone of another agent while he's making a big sale. And so
oh,
he gets up and punches the guy next to him that threw the marshmallow. It was a total fiasco, but it wasn't my fault. And I had a great time. So it was very memorable. You never know what you're going to run into at work, in the HR department. Every day is different.
All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation with Ben. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Follow him on Facebook. He's got a Facebook page set up for Entrepreneurs Against Poverty. Just an amazing cause, as well as if you're looking for hiring tips, go check out his book. Thanks so much to Ben for taking the time to talk with me, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.